we go.
Are we live? Are we live? Let's see if we can refresh this page. I'm just an amateur. Jimmy's the pro. Let's see. Hey, we're live. Let's see if we can click to expand. See who's in the room. I should. Let me. Oh, I should usually he checks the sound. Where's the remote for the? There it is. Can we hear anything? Hey, sounds like we got sound. Now the question is, will we have anybody join us? Alright, let me see if I can get me on there. I'm starting to get some people. Now the real question is, can we tell who's who's on there? I can't have mine with volume or I get in big trouble. It starts echoing. It says we got 2 comments. Oh, good afternoon. Jim Shade's there and Mark can hear me. All right. So we'll, as Jimmy usually does. So Jimmy is in Milwaukee with Rick. They're at the NSSF Range Retailer Show, seeing a bunch of our customers, talking to some new potential customers. They're obviously they got our display of all of our stuff. They also have a bunch of our tactical girth apparel, and always gets a chuckle out of everybody coming by, which is good. So the show started yesterday afternoon. I think it goes through today and tomorrow, maybe lunchtime, and I can't remember what day Jimmy gets back. If he gets back tomorrow night, I think so. But so yeah, so you guys are stuck with me talking handguards today. The good news is I have one to give away. I should take it out of its wrapper. So we got one of our Old Glory Handguards. We like to give these away since we're close to the 4th of July and Jimmy's not here. You guys know that that usually means I come in to give something away. I also have a couple other things that we can do, consolation prizes. But the odds of winning right now are 1 in 7, maybe even 6, because I'm probably one of those on there, although I can't really tell. I got to figure out how can we see who's on. Because if I can't see who's on, then it's really tough to know who. Might have to have everybody comment so I can see everybody's name. These are the minor technical details that we got to come up with to put on a little contest here. See if I can. Gotta work my Facebook. So we definitely got those 2. How do we see who all is on? Let's see. We'll figure it out. We'll probably have everybody have to comment. All right, Richard Triplet says hi. Mark says hi, Jim. So we got 4. Yeah, if everybody can comment on there while they're on, and if we get more comments than we have people watching, then we'll know something's up. Or maybe we Marissa's there. I don't think relatives of our staff are eligible for winning. Sorry, Marissa. But we're glad you're watching. So let's see. We're talking handguards today. We're talking not the technical side, but we're talking the financial side. So what goes into making a handguard? It's funny, we when we started doing this, our guy Jim has a threshold of what he thinks is acceptable to pay for a handguard, and it's because he knows how to make them, and so he's not going to overpay for something because he'll just go make it himself. And obviously we've made a lot of handguards in the last decade, and so the opportunity to see what goes into it, just give everybody a little more insight into what all goes into it, and why it might cost $100, why it might cost $300, why it might cost more, or why it might cost a little less. So let's see, we got Angie on, we got Kimberly on. Oh, my thing says who's watching. Rob Robertson is on. So yeah, we'll start writing down. That's what we should do, Myra. We should write down some names. I can't give you this piece of paper though because it's my notes to what we're talking about. All right, so let's get into it a little. Let's see, cost of a handguard. So we start with the raw material. So I got a number of different. So we use aluminum extrusion to make them. The long handguards, obviously, if you're trying to machine the inside, is tough. If you had a short handguard, you could start with just a block or a hunk of material. But most handguards, because that's where the barrel goes, we got to have that open on the inside. And so, because they're typically long and skinny, it's a good use of an aluminum extrusion. Most of them are aluminum. Most of them are 6063, which is 6061 is a very standard alloy and plate and bar, and then 6063 is the alloy that comes through extrusion. So so the cost of the extrusion depends on the cross section and how much, essentially per inch, or a pound. They sell it by the pound, and so we convert that into measuring it by the inch, and so it can be. I mean, the prices, and we just looked in the last 5 years, the prices have more than doubled on aluminum, which is not surprising. We're seeing that in a bunch of different things. But so from anywhere from, I think they've gone from in the 25 cents to about 50 cents an inch. But so you see a bunch of different, and I won't be able to hold them all up at the same time, a bunch of different shapes. So you got the quad, which has the side rails, which adds a lot of material compared to the other. We have a standard mil-spec extrusion for a mil-spec barrel nut that's got, and if I get that close, you can see the grooves and stuff around that. And then we have some for some special opportunities where we don't need a big lug on the bottom. So we have one that looks like that, just got two Picatinny rails, one on the top and one on the bottom. And then one of our favorite handguards, our ARV, you can see it's got a big, much thicker on the bottom, but it's rounded on the bottom. So we'll see what that handguard looks like in a second and why it's different. But so pretty typical. You had a rail of some sort. All the ones that I showed you had a rail on them. Oh, and then the one other one. So we also make 308s. So unfortunately, this one I couldn't find a raw one out there because I didn't look early enough. But this is a 308, slightly bigger. I'm juggling handguard extrusion, so it's slightly thicker. I don't know if it's easy to see that, but it's a bigger extrusion because a 308 is a bigger handguard. And so what goes into that? So we have to buy, and they have to make a die to be able to push that through. So one is the cost of the material, one is the cost of the die and how complex it is. It's anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 to get a die, and then typically they push a sample to make sure they got the dimensions right, and then you have to buy some initial lot of material, anywhere from, I don't know, it's depending on the weight, but typically it's a couple $1,000 also, so that you can get an initial stock of them. As you buy more, obviously, as with most things, the price can start to come down. But so you take the standard thing. One of the couple things that we talk about besides just getting the raw material is our what tight tolerance do you have here? How smooth is the outside finish? Are you going to be able to have the outside finish be a final dimension, or is it initially? Certainly we machined every aspect of it. We have some now where we've worked with the extruder long enough we can get smooth surface on the outside where we don't have to machine everything. Obviously, the less machine time that we have, the more cost effective it is to produce. And so we get into the machining. So part of the challenge, and let me get here, I'll even use this 308 one that we have, right? So this one's a little bent. You probably can't see that in the picture. But so we machine both ends of an extruder. So we cut it to length, so they come in huge, like 12-foot length extruded lengths. They come in a big bundle. We pull them off and we put them on a saw and we cut them to length. So that sawing operation, it actually requires a fairly large space because we got to bring these really long things in. We got to balance them so that we can cut it pretty true. The more perpendicular that we can make the cut, the better it is for follow-on operations when you're holding onto this thing and doing some of the cutting. We do, and you can see even on this one, the end is very shiny because we cut the face, and then we cut and bore for the barrel nut on the other side, so that those operations need to be in line with each other. Extremely important because we want this thing to point downrange, and we want it where it's attached to the upper and where the barrel is going to come out. We want that to be straight because we're mounting our sights on the top rail, and so having the parallel between the barrel itself and the Picatinny rail is really important. So the types of machining that we do, and so the difference between, I'll just pick up two kind of standard ones, and we'll talk about the coatings differently. But so this one has what they refer to, or Jimmy would tell me, as the quad cluster, right? Which is, there's the quad handguard, so it's that heavier extrusion that we cut away most of it on the sides. This one's got a QDSM port on the back. But so having this extra material, obviously we have to cut away a bunch of stuff. So having the standard extrusion, the more closely it mirrors the standard extrusion, the less machining there is. But then the fancier, so we want a nice fancy handguard. I don't know if I brought any. Yeah, so here's one of our foundation series. This one's one of the Cerakoted ones, which we'll talk about in a second. But fairly simple pattern. Little holes underneath, nothing punched through the top of the Picatinny rail. These and just straight M-lock. So fairly just solid handguard, fairly simple. Enough geometry to make it look not super plain, but when you start to get into more complex shapes, and you can see the little, I think they call this the Tron rail. The more cutting you do inside the little edges, the smaller tool that you have to use means you got to go slower. So if you go into your local gun store and you look at the variety of handguards, you'll see them in a bunch of different colors. You'll see them with a bunch of different geometries. Some of them are pretty thick. Some of them are pretty heavy. Obviously, if you're going to carry it around a while, it gets pretty heavy. This is one of our more popular when we go to shows. Super light. It's got a front end, which we'll talk about in a second, but a lot of the weight taken out of this, and it's a pretty cool looking handguard. This was one of this is for the guys up in Crennel Hunter up in Wisconsin. One of our more popular ones. When we put it on a show table, people can see, hey, this is a really sleek, slick handguard. And so taking a lot of the weight out of it, it takes longer to cut, which just adds to the cost. And yet, obviously, you want it to look cool, and we create these designs to create a signature look for our customers. So going from one handguard to the next, so if we're going to machine this one, we're going to run a bunch of these, and then we're going to switch over to this one. There's a changeover time in between. There's tooling, so how we hold on to this thing. We're going to machine, as we said, the ends to get where we can hold on to it, and then we put it on a 4th axis machining center, and we spin it around and do all this machining. As you guys have been on a tour, I think Adam and Brent took you on a tour a number of weeks ago. You can see where this is. And they go in there and they spin around and do all this geometry. And the longer that machining takes, obviously, the more cost associated with doing that. So things that add cost. Removing more material, the less material we have to remove, the longer it takes, or the more material we have to remove, the longer it takes. The tighter the corners, so the tighter, the smaller the tool, it typically takes longer, and smaller tools tend to break more often. And so we're trying to do it as quickly as possible, and yet create the design that our customers are looking for and that you guys want to have on your rifles. We do have a couple crazy ones. So you guys have seen our deer track handguard, and I'll hold that one close. But it's got the deer print there. Again, that's been pretty popular. We do some engraving on the sides. This one has the Deer Hunter little logo that we put on the side of there. Again, all the little pieces and parts that we add time to it, which again adds slightly to the cost. And so let's see. I talked about, and the other thing is, so length, right? So we got this little 7-inch one. We got this big, I don't know how many, 18 to 22 inch run, right? So obviously this one's going to go dramatically faster than this. The end work that needs to be done on each is the same, but then you got to add all that machine time to do the rest of the handguard. So again, that we all know is going to be longer. It starts to get to this long, then we got to do special stuff, because now we're typically holding on the ends, and when we hold on the egg, it wants to sag, it wants to kind of scream while it's in the machine. So we got to get a little creative to be able to do super long ones like that. We don't get to do those very often. And so let's see, length and the complexity we talked about. Like this Foundation Series handguard, we machine every external surface that you see. Some of the others are Cornerstone Series. We intentionally We were looking to make the most affordable handguard that we could, and so most of the finished surfaces on the Cornerstone ones are not machined. And obviously we work to make sure that it still meets our quality standards for visual appearance. And we'll talk about what we do after we get it off the machine in a second. So the tool size and the features that we're cutting, the cross section. So one of the things that we've had a couple where we've tried to make for people where this one's pretty light, and yet the way the geometry works is still very stable, very solid. We've had some of them where we got it super thin, and then it either chattered really bad, or in some cases it was just way too thin that we had to thicken up some spots, or it was not going to be physically viable in the kind of environment that our rifles can go into. So we got to make sure it's thick enough. If the thinner it gets, the harder. You got to go slower when you're cutting it. Again, takes more time to cut, and it's when it's less solid. Again, it makes it more challenging for us to machine, which means we typically have to slow down, which takes more time. And then extra features and bling. You know, this, for example, you can see there's really nothing else on the main side. Some of these have pretty extensive on the side of the barrel nut. You know, here's some that's, again, purely decorative, right? But, hey, the decoration part of it, it takes some time to do. So, again, it's just all part of what comes into the cost. I better stop there and see if, let's see, Marissa said hi. If anybody's got any questions, don't hesitate to shoot them out. I don't know that I can answer them. Jim's the expert, as you well know, but we'll keep going. All right, so inspection time. So there's a number of different things that we try and do. Most of our handguards that we do are the clamp style handguard where it's just at the back end it squeezes, and what happens naturally, a part of that when you clamp on there, it causes the front end to raise up a little bit because we're applying pressure at the bottom. That the length of the handguard matters. There's some geometric stuff that we do to reduce that, but certainly we have checks to make sure that the part stays in line, because we want, when somebody attaches this to an upper, we want it to stay true to the sight lines, because ultimately we're trying to shoot at a target and we want to make sure that we can hit it, and it's keeping a steady relationship between the barrel and the top where the sights are going to go. So we do some checking. Obviously the main features, whether it's the M-locks, we want the thickness of those surfaces to be correct, both for the M-lock geometry so that the stuff you want to mount to it mounts properly. And then there's a handful of functional things where it goes into the upper that are super important, that we want to make sure that we're checking everything so that it's right. Obviously, when we go from this handguard to this handguard in the machine, they're the same length, they're similar, and yet we need to make sure that each program that we switch to is still producing the features at the end that are going to properly mount to the rifle. So there's some gauges that we've made, some gauges that we've purchased to be able to make sure that everything we make is to a high quality standard, because Jimmy will tell you he doesn't want us to ship anything that he wouldn't put on one of his guns, and so that's a pretty high standard. But certainly we want to make sure that we're making a part that's going to be functional, because when we ship these out, we want them to get installed on rifles and not have to come back for any repairs or anything. And then the time to check, again, we try and do most of our inspection while the machine is running, and yet that's not always possible, especially when we're doing a changeover where we run a first piece off and then we come in and check to make sure it's in a good spot. Once it comes off the machine, it's really important that we then prepare the surface for two things. One, it's going to be held in somebody's hand, so we got to make sure there's no sharp corners. We deburr certain parts. When you're machining into this extruded spot, we created a little deburring thing where it's like a pipe cleaner that goes down here and spins around so that we can clean out the burrs off the inside, and then the parts typically when they go to depends on what kind of coating it gets, but an anodizer will blast the outside. They do that and try and make it as uniform as possible. Mostly that's an automated process so that it's equally blasted everywhere so that when it goes to get coated, it gets done. But so there is time associated with the burring. Again, we try and do it inside the cycle if we can. We take all of ours, and before they go to anodizing, we tumble them. So there's some deburring on specific features that don't tumble away well, but tumbling is a vibratory process that goes in a big drum, and it has a bunch of ceramic stones that knock the edges off. They'll go in there for, I don't know, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to just soften the edges. You can see a visual difference, but because the parts get blasted right before they get anodized, you don't notice that they got tumbled, and it definitely creates a more uniform finish for when the parts go out. So there is, again, so there's some time tumbling. Let's see, coating. So there's a number of different kinds of coating. So obviously we have parts, and some people like to do their own coating. So we'll sell them in the bright, unanodized, depending on sometimes we know that they want to be Cerakote, they want to do stuff, and we can do some prep for that. I know Jimmy's done a couple where he's done his rattle can thing where he's just painted them with some spray paint to match some other parts of the gun that he doesn't want to send it to get it, but he doesn't want it to be just black. Standard, of course, is the hard coat anodized, and we do a lot of that. Again, the length of the part is the biggest thing. AR-10 is very similar to AR-15 price-wise, and obviously we want it to be black, and it's one of those things where we have an anodizer. They're up in Minnesota. They do a great job for us, and we've tried a number of different places, and their clinics, much work as we do into these, you want them to make sure that they come back and they're good and black and ready to go out to our customers. So Cerakoting, here's the example, and this is that I think flat dark earth. You know, we have a number of different colors that we have done over the years, and we have a local Cerakoter who does a nice job. There's another guy, the guys at Oxcode have done a bunch of these for us too. You know, and even these, right? So this one we're going to give away today. You know, that's a much more complicated Cerakote process, and so typically the anodizing is the standard. And then the Cerakoting in a plain color is kind of the next level. It's probably 3 times or 4 times more expensive than anodizing. And then when you do something like this, it probably goes up, 50% more than that at least. And depending on who it is and how many you're doing. So we tend to do them in a little bit bigger lots than you would do it if you were just doing it as individual. But the other thing we can't, so we're not typically taking in an upper to go with it so that they match. So flat dark earths, there's some standard colors that a certified Cerakoter will make sure they match well because they have a process that they do to do that. And so, you know, obviously everybody feels better when they send all their parts at the same time to the same place to get Cerakoted at the same time so that the color will match. And then, of course, with the rattle can, you can paint it any color that you want and get whatever consistency, how good you spray it on. Let's see, so barrel nuts. So obviously we got to attach this thing to the upper. We have our standard barrel nut. It looks like that. There's a couple of different coatings that we've used for some of them. Hard coat. I just lost the nitrided. Right, so nitride coating. There's some of them get phosphate coated. Again, you're just looking for some black, consistent black that's going to provide you some corrosion protection. This one is 4140, which is our standard. We do have various different aluminum ones. The aluminum ones get different. They get typically a clear coat anodizing coating, and the reason you'd use aluminum is mostly just for weight. Hey, Russ Jackson made it on there. Patrick's there. Hey, we're up to 12. That's good. Your flag, Cerakote Handguard is well done. At least the one I won. Did somebody say they won it before? Let's see. Yeah, I got one. Yeah, Patrick said that. So yeah, no, they do a really nice job on that. And so we talked about the difference in cost, right? So this is our Cornerstone Series barrel nut, and this is our Foundation Series barrel nut. Hopefully you can see those. I'll get those close. You can see the one's got grooves in it. The weight, so the Cornerstone one is slightly heavier. And essentially what we wanted was the most cost-effective one to go in our Cornerstone handguard, because that was what we were trying to get, the most cost-effective handguard that we could, that was still solid enough that Jimmy'd want to put it on one of his rifles. And then this is our standard. And the reason the standard has a couple grooves, one is to remove weight, and the other is that it mates with our retention system. So I have, let's see, I think this is the retention system for the Grendel Hunter one. So the retention system goes in where it connects, and the groove of the retention system, the grooves fit into the grooves of the barrel nut so that it won't slide off. The one challenge in having a clamp-on style handguard is that if you use enough force, you can pull it off. Unless you put a retention system like this is our patented way that we do it, it goes on and it goes right into those grooves. So even if, as long as that metal piece is in there, this thing's not coming off unless you shear the metal, which is never going to happen. So so we get that, and obviously if the retention key, if the screws going into it fall out and the retention key falls out, then it can slide off. But the idea is that it's not just going to pull off because it got excessive vibration, but it's going to have to take a serious thing where you're going to have to get screws out and have the part come out before it's going to come off. So again, it is a lighter, but it takes longer to machine, and so that's why the Cornerstone one doesn't have that. Obviously, making these retention keys is not trivial, and depending on, there's a couple machining operations there. We've actually, one group of them we had cast, and then we just tapped the holes for threaded, that are threaded in there to attach it to the handguard. Otherwise, our standard, I know one of these has, so there's just standard screws in here. Our Cornerstones, so this Foundation series has a nut and a bolt back to back, so steel on steel. Our Cornerstone series, we actually have 3 holes and 3 fasteners, but they screw directly into the aluminum, so we put one extra one there just to make sure it stays on. And yet, obviously, if you over torque something in aluminum, you can rip those threads out, which is why we provide an extra one. But so the cost of the fasteners, obviously, and the cost of these retention keys is part of the cost of the parts. So typically, we're getting these out into the retail environment. I brought some packaging, right? So when you go to the gun store, you'll see a bunch of handguards. A lot of them will be in plastic, like those plastic containers. We use cardboard for ours. So we've created, and this is for a 13 to 15 inch handguard or a 7 to 10 inch handguard. And so we distinguish between the different parts by putting a sticker on here that gives all the details on what it is, so that we can, we have a bunch of different part numbers that go in this box and a bunch that go in this box. But again, making those boxes, getting them designed and then made and then folded together. Back in the good old days, I used to watch a bunch of baseball and football games and fold boxes at my kitchen table while I was watching TV. But so, obviously you want it to look attractive. You want to get the information that a consumer needs to be able to make an informed purchase, and we wanted it to be able where you could see inside, you could feel it, you could touch it if you wanted, to be able to know that it's got good American-made quality to it. One I almost forgot, so as we talk about the machining, so this is our ARV handguard. This one is still a little moist from being in its wrapping, but the machining of this one, as you can see, right, is not straightforward. We do some 3D contouring process, which makes it super slick. So, it fits there. It's this MP5 clone part that we do, but the machine time associated with doing that is pretty significant. The other thing, and you can see, it's not a standard configuration down here. We actually have a little patented way we attach that thing so that it will lock in place on the barrel nut, and yet still be pretty invisible to somebody who's looking at it, so it's pretty sweet. But so again, associated with the cost of doing stuff, it obviously takes longer to machine that. Good thought on the packaging. Yeah, it was. Whenever you need help on something, this is a good. You bring in some experts to check it out and look at different options. And the two things about the plastic ones that we didn't like: one, there's enough plastic in the world that we don't need to add to it if we can help it. And 2, we had so many different kinds of parts, and using cardboard that's recyclable was helpful, and then using stickers to differentiate between a bunch of different things. So I think we have a total of 5 different size boxes to put all the pieces, parts, and stuff that we ship, maybe 5 or 6. But so, again, we want it to be nice and presentable, but we also want it to be easy to configure between a bunch of different stuff, so we're not carrying as many different SKUs of boxes we are of part itself. All right, so let's see. Time is money. Yes, Russ Jackson, it is. Good thought on the pack. It's been a while since I was able to watch. James Shade is back. Grooved is best. Very groovy. Yes, very groovy. Still need to get another V for an AR9 build. Definitely need to build an AR9. Jimmy's been talking about that. The groove barrel nut and handguard, yes. Jim is in Milwaukee, yes, as a working vacation. All right, I think I caught up with all the comments. Like to see all the interaction there. So let's see. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I think our, and I didn't put the sticker in here, I think our 15-inch Cornerstone is MSRP is right at $100, and I think our Foundation Series maybe is 125 or 130 bucks. I know the ARV is more than that because of the machine time. The Cerakote, we actually do sell these on the website. I think it's just under 200 bucks. Obviously, getting that Cerakoted is a big deal and is a big part of that cost increase. Anybody got any other thoughts, questions? I missed the first part, making the AR-10 platform parts yet. So I did show our AR-10 extrusion, which is just part of the raw material piece. We have on the AR-15, we have a quad, and I think we actually have in the works an AR-10 quad for some of the stuff that we're doing. So that'll be new to our repertoire. We don't have as much because there just isn't as much volume in the AR-10 as in the AR-15. So we have a number of different extrusions for the AR-15, but the AR-10, I think we just have the one for the standard rail and that. So yeah, okay, that answers that question. All right, are we writing down names, Smire? We probably ought to do that. So if you're on there, so it shows there's 13 of us. So we got James Shade, we got Patrick, Russ, high and low. Yes, high and we have both high profile and low profile on. And yes, Russ, you nailed it. Of course, the difference is not very much, but if you have the wrong one, it's definitely enough that you know that it's the wrong one. And the number of times where somebody thinks they have one and they order the other, and then, of course, once we figure it out and figure out what the issue is, we get them to send it back and we send them a fresh one so they got their build in a good spot. Never an issue getting that replaced so that we got you doing the right parts. Yeah, been there. So we got Russ, we got James, we got Patrick Lone, we got Joe Groff, we got James Shade again, Patrick, Russ, we got Marcy Harvey, we got Mark Rigdon, we got Jim Wiggins says, can I win that if I'm a viewer today? No. I already told your daughter she can't win either. Yeah, Lisa can't win. Marissa can't win. Richard Triplett's on. I already said Mark Rigdon, right? And then there's Jim Shade, not to be confused with James Shade. All right, so then... All right, and then, so I get to go here, and I got to do... let's go random number. All right, so how many we got? All right, so let's read out. Let me have the names real quick because I want to make sure we got everybody because I don't want to. So wait, we got. Oh, that's Lisa. Sorry, so we got Mark, Angie, James Shade, Richard, Patrick, Russ, Marcy, Joe, Mark, and Jim Shade. So did I miss anybody? If I missed you, please put a comment in there because I don't want to miss anybody. It says there's 12, and I think one of them is me, and one of them is... Did we get Angie? We did get Angie, right? Yes. One of them is me, one of them is Jim, one of them is Marissa, Kimberly Hackney, so we need to add Kimberly. So we'll put Kimberly there. And TJ Lantar, Lantar. I'm here. Anybody else? We got Kimberly there. And Jim puts me. Love that. All right, so we got everybody. So that means Mark, Angie, James, Richard, Patrick, Russ, Marcy, Joe, Mark, Jim Shade, Kimberly, and TJ. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We got 12. We got 12. All right, so I got my random number generator. All right, we're going to do we're doing 3 prizes today. All right, we're doing the first one we're going to do is the big, and then we got a couple consolation prizes. We got one of our angled foregrips, and we got a flash hider. We don't want people to be sad if they don't get a chance to win. So our odds are pretty good. Your odds are 1 in 4 to be able to win one of these. All right, so do we need a drum roll? I don't think we need a drum roll. All right, on a 1 to 12, So we're going to hit generate, and it is number 5. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So Patrick, let's see. So what's Patrick's last name? Patrick is the winner. Lone. Patrick C. Lone. All right, so is he the one he said? Oh, this is perfect for an AR9 build, Patrick. All right, so Patrick is the winner there. So we'll circle that here. I'm going to give you that handguard, Myra, so that we stay out of trouble. So we got Patrick is got the handguard. Now, Patrick, if you win again, you're welcome to trade down to this angled foregrip. You probably won't want to do that. All right, let's do another one. Congrats to Patrick. And number 11 is Kimberly. So she was the one who checked in at the end there. So Kimberly Hackney. So she gets an angled foregrip. So I'm going to write that down so Myra doesn't get mad at me since I stole her paper. And our last ones today is number 3 is James Shade, and he's going to get an AR-15 flash hider. So there we go. Those will go in the proper packaging so that you guys have what you're supposed to have. And so congrats to everybody. Russ says, I need gas blocks. All right, so Russ, you and Jim can work on that one offline. Congrats, everybody. Patrick, wow, awesome, so exciting. I don't know if we have your stuff, Patrick or Kimberly or James. I believe we have James's. But if you aren't sure that we've got it, we'll reach out via message. If you know we don't have your address, then send us a private message, direct message, so that we can get those shipped out to you tomorrow. Thanks for everybody being patient with the fact that I don't know a whole lot about guns, but hopefully you get some idea of what goes into the cost side of creating handguards, so that we can put them on our rifles and have it look cool and be super functional. So don't worry, Jimmy will be back next week so that you guys can get back into the technical aspects of all the stuff that we do. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate everybody being here, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Take care.